Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, and today we're going to be getting into one of my favorite subjects, which is, comedy and mental health, the fine line between them and the balance and integration of both. I actually spoke at Podcast Movement Evolution Chicago about integrating comedy into dark subjects to address cancer, suicide, and other related topics, the delicate balance of it, especially as someone who hosts a show such as a podcast or does comedy where, reading the room, understanding the crowd, knowing who's listening and what is allowed and not, and what is in alignment with your image is so important. There's a balance in any industry, especially comedy, of what you want to do and selling out for, fame. And so we're going to get into all of that today. But one of the things I really like to focus on is the mental health aspect. What got me into comedy was basically being an involuntary therapist for military members. And humor was one way to connect with those closed off soldiers and sailors who didn't want to open up as much. And you build that relationship with that. And I got my comedic shirt. It's Abraham Lincoln shirtless riding on sharks. It's hard to see, but yeah, I figured wear something funny. But we're here with a gentleman who, similar to me, works in both mental health and comedy, and we're going to get into his personal journey with mental health and comedy today, and cultivate some life lessons for all of y'all. And whether you're an aspiring comedian or just want to learn to integrate comedy into your life better, or you just are interested in human stories and connections, this is going to be for you. So, Mr. Danny Johnson, great to have you here. And could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I like how you say I work in mental health, which I guess technically do as a comedian. I mean, it is my therapy up there, and well, and I do regular therapy too. I'm not, a lot of times men are afraid to say that, but my ultimate release is on stage. It is extremely healthy for me to that's my main goal, to make people laugh. I mean, we talked a little bit about in your intro, you talked a little bit about, are people just chasing fame or whatnot now? um Making a good living at what I do, and fame would be okay, but it would really just further my goal to make people laugh. I'm not looking to be famous to be famous. If that's where the road takes me, that's fine. If it doesn't, then I'm happy just making a living doing comedy, because that's my goal. I just want to make people laugh, whether it's my everyday interactions at the supermarket or on stage. And um, it's certainly been very therapeutic through my mental health struggles to get up there and kind of change. That's really the ultimate goal, right? It's to change the mood of the people that came to see you, or didn't come to see you. A lot of times they don't know who I am, right? So they just come to a comedy show to be uplifted. So I want to bring that uh, to them, and then hopefully they leave the show in a better mood, and that's my main goal.
Right. And with YouTube, you really don't know who you're reaching. Sometimes it's a
Right.
person you've never seen, met, or will know about. But it could be someone who's on the brink or having a terrible day, and they happen to be on YouTube, put on a comedy special just to laugh and really think about things. And it's funny you talk about just human interaction at the superstore and supermarket, and don't find this guy at Publix. It's quite the scene, and that's a
Yeah.
reference to your comedy special, which I just watched the other day with my neighbors. And it's funny because in your bio, for podcasting, it talks about mental health, struggling with body image and other
Oh
related
yeah.
content. But having watched your special, to me, and I'm sure everyone watching it would have thought you were extremely comfortable with who you are and your body because of
Oh
the way you make fun of it. Because most people who are insecure about something in their life or unhappy with something don't bring attention to it, especially
yeah.
in a comedic sense. So I'd love to explore that concept of, I don't like my body. So is making fun of it, oh, is it kind of an accountability where it kind of each joke kind of reminds you of what you want to change?
That's an interesting question. So how many, you said it was a couple of your neighbors watched it?
For sure. Yeah. It was me and my one main neighbor, and then I told a couple other people about it. And
Very cool.
we might throw it on again for Thanksgiving night. Who knows?
Yeah, and that's sort of the goal of, my comedy's clean, and my goal of wanting to make people laugh being so broad, that's and it's just an extension of my
Yeah.
personality. So I want you to be able to watch it wherever you are, you
Yeah.
know,
And that's
and
why I watched it was because it's clean. Because me personally, like
Mhm.
so much of a world, especially on social media, is just inundated with sexualization, gore, racism, hate,
Yeah,
and it's sad because we've really trained our children to enjoy that, to only enjoy that.
yeah,
And I think, the idea, and there's this, stigma almost, I'll say a stereotype that, oh, if you're doing clean humor, it must be Christian humor, and I'm not religious. It has nothing to do with that. And I
right.
think there are unfortunately a lot of people, both comedians and then audience, and who believe that cursing is just such a great amplification that it really drives home the joke or it really makes it so much funnier. And
Right.
sometimes an F-bomb will make something funnier, but for me, it's unnecessary. And nothing turns me off more from watching a show or movie where they just, drop a curse word every 5 minutes just to emphasize their point. It kind of
Yeah.
becomes when you curse about everything, you curse about nothing kind of mentality. And I
Yes. And
think,
I think like I mean I like all kinds of humor. So I like other comedians, clean, dirty. What I just appreciate the art of stand up. But what I don't get is the curse word just for the sake of it, like you said. It
right.
shouldn't be your punchline. You know, if you're using it in a way that kind of makes sense to make a point, that's fine for me to watch. But if it's just the punchline, I think you can
Mm.
write a little better. But back to your question. So talking about your faults or your insecurities, I think that's what stand up is about, is talking about your faults and insecurities. And then if you're a socially conscious comedian, you could talk about greater society and politics, which I don't, but yeah, it brings it, it's a therapeutic. It's top of my mind all the time, all of my insecurities, all of my doubts. So I write most about that. And then what can I find funny that people would relate to in those areas, whether it's seeing a therapist. I talk about that in my special a little bit. My journey with weight loss, weight gain, weight loss, weight gain, weight loss, weight gain, my body image. Um, it's nice to hear that you think I look comfortable up there. I do feel the most comfortable up there on stage when I'm on stage. But off stage, I'm an introvert. Most performers are, and I'm terrified of public speaking. So I'm not terrified to tell jokes because I'm prepared. I know what I'm going to say, and I have at this point in my career have enough material to kind of shift gears if I need to. So I'm not at a lack of material. So, but I find it very therapeutic um, to talk about, I guess, what may or may not be the elephant in the room, whether it's the outfit I'm wearing, how it makes me look, or my journey to the gym, stuff like that, you know.
Right. No, I understand that. And, I don't. I guess I have even poked at my own insecurities, like I'm 5'8", which to most women that's tall enough, but plenty of women that's like, ew, you're short. You're a short kid.
Right.
It's like 6 foot minimum. And I remember I was joking about, well, guess what, ladies? When I was on the submarine, 5'8" was really tall. I hit my head
Yeah.
several times. I was talking about how I'm tall and like I'm a skinny guy, but on a submarine, turns out I'm quite heavy set myself because there was parts of the submarine I had to turn sideways too. So, like my height and weight would be my biggest insecurity. My weight gain journey of so it's opposite of most people. I was trying to gain weight and I gained weight and then I lost the weight and I was trying to gain it back. So
Yeah.
most people, especially middle-aged women, more than anyone else, when they hear about this journey I'm on, they're like, "Well, here I'm trying to lose 35 pounds. Take it."
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
get
And
it, and
that's fun. That's funny because people dislike people that can't gain weight.
yeah, I definitely
Not
have
genuinely,
faced
but
that.
they're very frustrated. They're like, "Oh, you having a hard time." I gain weight when I smell pizza. It's
Yeah, yeah.
and
So
you're
I've
five
definitely
eight,
dealt with
but
that.
you're 5'8", 6'3" with the hat.
Right. Well, that's funny because my joke is I'm 5'8", 5'10" with the cowboy boots. So yeah, and then add the hat on
Yeah,
top of
five
it.
eight
So
with the cowboy, 5'8", 5'10" with the cowboy boots, 6'3" with the hat.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And no, it's but yeah, you definitely seem comfortable. And I think, the relatability, like you mentioned, is, everyone's insecure about something. And when they hear you making fun of something about themselves, it kind of allows them to lighten up about what they're worried
Yes.
about. So I think
They're
it's
thinking about
great.
it.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, also just going back to I think, and this is my personal opinion, I think, comedians who are pure clean are more skilled because you have to purposely craft around those and you can't just use them as a filler word. Because I mean, most people you throw in a curse word and it will get them a chuckle. So I think it takes a particular craft. But on the opposite end too, if you are crafting the curse words in such a manner to be in a very certain part of the joke, it
Yeah.
also takes a lot of skill. And that's one thing I'd love to discuss too is in spirit. Well, let's go back to what got you into comedy in the first place, because I think that's so important.
Yeah, I don't it's probably a long journey. I've always tried to make this a short story and it's never works out. But from a young age, I grew up the oldest of five in New York and a very loud family from Long Island, New York. And I just remember constantly, my mother constantly having children. And that's not obviously a literal statement, but if I was to psychoanalyze myself, I would say, over a good chunk of my adolescence, the attention on me was constantly less and less because we were having more and
Mm,
more
right.
children, right? So I got into comedy, I guess purely by watching TV, and then I became fascinated with it when I was able to stay up late enough to watch Johnny Carson. I'm like, oh, these guys are just talking and they're getting laughs and they're getting attention. So at family functions, I started to like imitate my relatives. I found a knack for, although I don't do impersonations in my act now, but when I was a kid, I would impersonate my uncle or whoever and get big laughs. And then in my church youth group, there was a talent show, and I was a big Saturday Night Live fan. And I would get my friends and we would write original sketches, and then we would reenact some Saturday Night Live sketches as well. So when I turned 18, I had this notebook full of ideas and material, and I'm like, I'm going to try stand up. So there was a small comedy club on Long Island. I turned 18, and my buddy and I went up and did a comedy duo uh, for the first time ever, and I was hooked from that point on. And I say that to say this: I didn't do stand up again until I finished college, but I constantly wrote because of my fear of public speaking. So when I finished college and moved to Florida, I happened to move down the street from the biggest comedy club in the city. And they were holding like a workshop for, do you want to be a house MC? Do you want to get into comedy? So I joined this workshop and attended it for a couple months before. And then they started doing open mic nights. It's called a booked open mic night. So you can't just sign up, you have to be asked. And I started
Mm,
doing those and then eventually hired as a house MC. And at the time, back in 99, 2000, 2001, um, that comedy club and most comedy clubs were open Tuesday through Saturday, a show every night, a show or two. So I was house MC Tuesday through Saturday, at least once, 1 week a month, if not more. And from there, got to meet other comics, and then they started taking me on the road to open for them. And then I would start taking younger comics to open for me, and you kind of move up in the ranks based on how much time you have. And then I started doing commercial work, local commercials, acting stuff. And then I got on Comedy Central for 2.5 seconds for this contest, nationwide contest. And that helped me get bumped to headliner because I had a TV credit. But that was my journey into it. And then you just kind of keep growing and writing. And then my
right.
very first comedy special wasn't until 2019 for Dry Bar Comedy. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
Hmm.
It's a faith-based production company out of Utah, and they produce nothing but clean comedy specials. So I got asked to do that in 2019, did that. It's got millions and millions of views. It ended up getting licensed by this company called Comedy Dynamics, and they put it on Amazon, Apple TV, and Peacock. And then I didn't film my next one until January of this year, which is the one you watched called Everything Bothers Me. And I did that through this company, Honest Fox Entertainment, Honest Fox Media. They are a social media company and brand company that works with Jim Gaffigan, Leanne Morgan, Brian Bates, some of the bigger Jeff Allen, clean comedy names. And they put it out just in October. So we're almost at Thanksgiving right now. I don't know when this will be released, but they I filmed it in January. They didn't decide to publish it until a month ago, and it's already at 100 and some thousand views, which for a guy who's not a Jim Gaffigan or a Leanne Morgan is pretty. I'm impressed that it has that many views. But um, yeah, that's sort of my how I got interested, how I got broke into the business, and then from that point on, it's all on me to get bookings and whatnot.
For sure. I think it's funny because I've been consuming more and more stand-up comedy and comedians. I enjoy it in general, but also just to
Hmm.
help me learn. And I think the public scale has been used as a punchline for jokes more than it's actually been used in the store because I heard you and then one other comedian making fun of it. And it was funny because
Making fun of what? I didn't catch that.
the scale in Publix,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
the I think more people have used it as a punchline than actually used it. And it's funny because I moved down south and discovered Publix, and I guess I never noticed the scale, and then I heard you talk about it, and then another comedian I watched also mentioned it. So I'm like, next time I go, I got to go look for this because
Yeah.
I didn't realize that that happened. And but yeah, in impersonations of people was actually kind of a big thing I did when I was in the military because there would just be these sailors that had very unique personalities that seemed very easy to impersonate, but
Right.
I guess people just couldn't do it, and I would do it pretty well. And it's easy when they've got their own dialect. I think the military is a great place for impersonations because you have such a diverse collection of people from around the
Hmm.
world, and you think you know the average American, and then you go in the military and you're like, where have these people been? These are like comic
Yeah.
book characters come to life. You meet some, and I'm sure traveling on the road as you have, you've come across some strange and unique and interesting people
Oh
along the
yeah.
way as well. So it's definitely something that happens. And I think that, yeah, I know this will be coming out tomorrow, actually, as tomorrow as in the day after the recording. So
Good.
it's still pretty fresh, and we're gonna have that special linked in the description below for people to check out. And I'll
Yeah,
actually,
like it, watch it, share it, comment.
yeah,
I'll comment back. Whatever helps the algorithm, right? And it's so funny. You talked earlier about how what is popular online and what isn't. And my most popular TikTok video is me doing it was sarcasm, and I started the video with saying car salesmen are the worst, and I kind of go into a rant about car salesmen, and
okay,
it was really just more frustration with the process. I didn't mean it in a literal sense that these people are the worst and it got such fanfare and so many comments, hundreds of comments and thousands of views, and I was like, it's so silly. Some of these car salesmen that I was commenting with or DMing with and going back and forth with ended up following me, and I'm following them. It's like it's a I'm a comedian. This is sarcasm. And I was so
right,
almost disappointed. Like, so some of the jokes I've written and performed for years trying to perfect the punchlines didn't get that many views, but because I quote unquote slammed a group of people in an occupation, that gets the most. It's so
yeah.
bizarre.
Well, it's funny because that leads into my next question, no pun intended. I was going to ask about the expectations around jokes because I've only performed a small handful of times, but what was so interesting to me was the jokes that I thought would be so, just full crowd laughing, like hooting and hollering, and then the
Yeah.
joke that like was my favorite, like this is my favorite joke. Like I'm so excited for this, just like dead silence or a few chuckles, and you're
Yeah.
like, what? Like I thought that joke was the like biggest joke of the entire performance, and
Right.
for some reason, this little stupid joke that I made, was so
Yeah.
such a reaction. So have you had that experience, I'm sure, yourself?
Oh, for sure. And it's very weird. And Jerry Seinfeld said this one time in an interview, if I remember correctly. He said, it's very interesting in this business that we as the comedians are the professional in funny, but the audience is the boss. They're telling us what's funny,
Right.
but we're the ones creating it. It's very bizarre.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would encourage you to keep doing all those jokes for time and time again, and
Oh
they'll
yeah.
grow, they'll shrink, they'll get removed. After a certain period of time, you give up on it. But I don't give up on a joke for a long, long time. I try to find out why didn't it work. Was it the way I said something? Was it the cadence? Was it the someone dropped a plate? One of the wait staff dropped a plate? Or did something happen? Like,
Right.
listen to yourself, watch yourself. But yeah, don't give up on a joke. And then the audience teaches you, from your initial couple of sets, what if it's consistent that a joke is doing really, really well and it's at the beginning and you're really like, oh, I didn't think it would do that well. You can always move it to your closer. That's your new closer, so because you want
Mm.
to start high, end high,
Right.
and crescendo to the end. So they'll help you craft your set, your initial set, and that set will keep growing or hopefully I would think at your beginning level, so to speak, your jokes will shrink because you're probably wordy. And I didn't get a chance to watch your clip. I will after this, but most comedians, including myself, when you first start, it's too many words. It's so you'll notice that you'll be able to shrink it, but then you'll start thinking of additional punchlines to add to those jokes. So they'll shrink it first, then grow towards the end when you can be more succinct with it. But yeah, all the time. I mean, I improved a line on stage a couple months back that is turning into a bigger bit. It's like I just said this one line. Somebody mentioned something about the beach, and I said my line was, "Oh, I back to them was, oh, I only go to the beach when I have a bunch of straws I need to get rid of."
Right.
Huge laugh. There's so many layers to that line, like because it's
Yeah.
such an absurd thing to say. I obviously don't save my straws and put them in a hefty bag and then wait to go to the beach to dump them into the ocean, right? And then it turned into me talking about how a woman with turtle tattoos came up to me after a show, and she's like, here's my turtle sleeve, and I'm a huge
Uh-oh.
advocate for conserving animal life, and straws kill turtles.
Yeah.
And I don't appreciate you saying you save all your straw. You only go to the
That
beach
was
when you
the
have.
whole joke is that you were
Yeah,
killing
I
all
was
the
like,
turtles. That's the whole joke. But
so
yeah,
I know, and I said to her, I was like,
you
look,
can't
lady,
please everyone.
turtles live to be 100 years old. You would think at this point they'd learn to drink right from the cup. And so now I do that whole story on stage. So what went from one line from some lady
Right.
yelling like "Welcome to the beach" because I was doing a show right near
I
the
know that
beach.
pissed her off.
Right, right, right. So it turns into a bit like, and if you remember from my special, I believe I open it doing a joke about getting my first and only ever massage, right?
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Well, that started at 60 seconds or less. And by the time I perfected it, after doing it for probably two some odd years, it was an 8 minute bit, close to 10 minutes sometimes,
Oh yeah.
depending on laughter. So it started out with this idea, and then I just go, okay, that's really resonating with crowds. What else happened? How do I go back and dissect? So I remember just writing all this stuff, and you kind of pick out. One of the things I used to do, and I don't do this anymore, in the very beginning was I would literally transcribe my set on paper. Then I would highlight where I thought I would get a laugh. And then I would record my set. Back in the day, I would have a little mini cassette recorder, handheld, and I would record it. And then I would listen to my set that night or the next day with the transcription and then highlight in a different color where I actually got the laughs.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
hopefully they overlapped. And I would find, oh, I'm getting a laugh during the setup and the punchline. That's something I need to build on. What else can I talk about around this topic? Or I didn't get any laughs at all where I thought I would. It's an interesting exercise to do. I would encourage you to try. It's a bit tedious, but
Yeah.
you know,
For me right now doing stand up, which is about 3 minutes on average, it's easy to just mentally keep track of
yeah,
where I thought. What I find, I guess the hardest part for me right now, well, three things. So the first was just slowing down because I'm a
yeah,
fast talker in general and leaving room for laughter.
yes,
I would just keep going and if people are
right,
trying to laugh, but then I'm talking and then and then I'm trying to edit the video and I'm got people laughing over my next
yep,
joke. So I've learned to slow down, which I think in stand up at the open mics and 3 minute kind of timer is much more difficult to do than when you have a full time to kind of slow down and story
Right.
tell. So for me, it's been I found that I, like most people, kind of overestimated what I could do in more than 3 minutes and
Yeah.
underestimated what I could do in 3 minutes. And it was
Right.
about trying to cram too much into the time and actually saying, no, let's slow down, lessen up, and make more impact with what we do have. And so that was hard part number one, still working on that. But from each, I've only performed 3 times. So from last year to this year, a whole year went by between my performances,
Wow.
significant improvement. It was just because I've been speaking and hosting events and just doing public
Mhm.
speaking, it kind of, they play hand in hand.
Right.
So it's taught me a lot more about just like stage presence. But then the thing is crowd shifting. So I went from being in the military, always with young guys, guys from 17 to 25, 28,
Right.
all certain humor type. And even now, knowing that both times I performed, it was majority middle-aged women and then some middle-aged men, all business owners, all in their between their 50s, 60s, and 70s, some on the 40s trying to craft toward that. And
Mhm.
I am not doing the best at it to a degree because like some of the jokes, so I sent, my stuff to some of the young military guys that are still in or now veterans, and what they found really funny is what I thought would be really funny that the
Right.
crowd did not necessarily understand. Like I had a joke in my military because I did one last year because it was on a cruise. So the whole bit was, "Hey, I'm on a cruise. It's my first cruise ever. I bet you most people don't know how to swim even. When I was in Navy, surprisingly, no one knew how to swim." And the whole thing was just about how the Navy, just
Yeah.
talking about the reality of the Navy. And I ended it with a Navy suicide joke that, Navy people found super funny, but I think most civilians, they just did not register that it was a,
Right.
a a suicide joke, which is a very military thing to do. And then this year, like I had a nuclear bombing joke that I thought was more universal, but that was more of an age thing as well. On the other
Yeah.
hand, there was stuff that the older women in the crowd found more funny than the young
Mhm.
military guys. So it's just a matter of knowing your crowd. But I mean, I am unique in that position that I know who's going to be there when I perform at the work events. But I imagine with you and most comedians, when you go, you don't know who's going to show up.
Right.
So what is like the universal mindset you kind of apply to
Mhm.
your craft to kind of like, is
Yeah.
there a certain demographic that you try to target the most or that you think would most people like this? Like, what is the mindset around that?
Yeah. Before we answer that, so that was two things you mentioned, right? One was the age thing, two was the pay, or one was the pacing, two was the, what's the third thing?
The third thing, the pacing was broken up into two things.
Oh,
So
okay.
the talking speed itself and
Yeah.
then the room for laughter.
Okay.
Because you can leave room for laughter but still be talking too fast for people to understand you.
Yeah. And
I've
that's
just
called
always been
stepping
a
on
fast.
your jokes is when you're talking while they're laughing. And that's hard to you got to get over. You have to learn to well, the great thing is you're self-aware. There's not
Yeah,
a lot of newer comedians that are self-aware. They just plow through their set and don't learn anything. So the fact that you're doing it, you're dissecting it is great.
thank
Don't
you.
over dissect it.
Yeah,
Second thing I would encourage you to do is you just do your material. At this point in stage in your comedy journey, there's no target audience. You're just spitting out what you think is funny, and then those that like you will go with you, and those that don't will wait for the next joke, right? So for me, that's the way I approached it in early in my career. So I would just do what I thought was funny, and some people would laugh, some wouldn't, and then that audience would then grow because you get to do then more time, more topics, more jokes, hopefully hit the larger group. And you can sort of write it, I'll listen to your set, like I said, but you can sort of write it so it's more generally accepted by different age groups too. So if it's too specific, later in your career, you can target a certain audience. But for me, stepping on your laughs is even harder to avoid for me when I do church gigs because church goers are I'll use the word trained, for lack of a better word, are trained to be quiet when the person on stage is talking. So I would tell a joke, get a laugh, and then go into the next joke, and they would immediately shut down. I
Mm,
didn't give enough time for that laughter to kind of, because they're used to the when the pastor or whoever is the leader of your church speaks, then you be quiet, right? So
right.
it had to kind of work on that timing. So I don't know that I have a specific audience type. Definitely not teens or young kids. Although I'm clean, it's not. I don't talk about things that they relate to. So, and I'll actually turn down work because of that. I got offered to do a Christmas party comedy show for a group of high schoolers, and I'm like, I have nothing to say to these high schoolers that are going to relate about me gaining weight and getting older, and
They speak
so
their own language nowadays too, with all this slang, 6'7", skibbity, riz,
yeah,
sigma. All they
I
have their
know I
own
have a 19
alphabet
year
and
old son.
language.
Yeah, yeah. So I would just say, great to see that you're self-aware. Don't step on your laughs. Then it'll help you do more time too. Is you'll do less jokes in the same amount of time you're allotted for these stage time. And don't feel like you have to cram in all these jokes. And then two, just do your. Don't worry about a target audience. Just you have to find your voice, and that'll take years. And find what topics you want to talk about. You can tweak the writing to make it a little bit more universal, but it all you just learn as you go. You learn as you do it. It is. I've heard comedians joke it about. It is the only career where you kind of learn by doing. You can't
Mm,
just become a surgeon and then bust into an ER and be like, "Let me give this appendix removal a shot. I want to be a surgeon and I want to practice." You can't do that
right.
with so with comedy. You
I
just got
would
to
add
go
it
do it.
to what my father always said, which was the weatherman is the only job you can fail and still get paid. And I think comedy is one of those things too, where I
Yep.
mean, as long as some people in the crowd like it, right, and you get
Yep.
booked again. And what I'm curious about is kind of, I mean, just listening to your stuff, and I think with most comedians, it's all about life experiences.
Mhm.
But would you say there's anything that is more inspiring than the others or rest of your life experiences? Or what would you say is your biggest source of comedic inspiration?
My large family. And growing up in that hectic household. And now I told you before I grew up the oldest of five, but between divorces and remarriages, I have on top of that, I have step and a half brothers and sisters. So
Okay.
I'm the oldest of like 10, I think, 10
Mm,
or 11. And going back and kind of dissecting my experiences in life. If as you get older, you have more, and I would say experience as much as you can and then soak it in and take notes and jot things down because you never know as you go back, you can pick it apart, dissect it, or it may relate to a joke that you wrote 2 years ago. You can bring it in. But my family and family dynamic for sure is um, a huge influence on my comedy and probably my mental health struggles as well.
yeah, no, that's relatable, because I grew up with two sisters and a mom, and then my dad, but I had a lot more feminine influence in my life, which meant learning a lot about Twilight and Taylor Swift and all that
Right.
stuff, so it does affect how you grow up. And I would say you mentioned something there, which is soaking in life experiences for comedic entertainment. And
Yeah.
what I have to ask is, this is something I've experienced that a lot of people in our field experience. Whether you're a comedian, a podcaster, an author, or a content creator, how do you balance living in the moment and making content? And what I mean by that is, how do you find it hard to enjoy life sometimes because you're just constantly making everything into a future bit, or are you able to kind of separate Danny Johnson, the comedian, and Danny Johnson, just the son brother, and all that?
Yeah. I don't think I have a hard time separating the two, but I think that's at a detriment to my comedy because uh, I find that I'll leave a family function and I'll be like asking, my girlfriend or whoever I'm with, like, what, remember when I had everybody laughing? What was I talking? What happened? What was I talking about? So whereas other comedians might stop in the moment and take a note, I think I need to make more of a mental note of those things. So, and then maybe the second part of that is sometimes folks I'm with are trying to get me more involved in the moment because I'm soaking in the situation
Mm.
and I'm like, this something about this is going to make it to the stage. And I'm not in the moment, maybe not enjoying it as much as I should. So I think I need to find selfishly, I want to be less in the moment. I want to take notes and mental notes because having content and material for stage to be fresh all the time is huge in this business. So uh, I think there's a delicate balance. And then maybe there's a third part to that. There are often people in my life, especially that don't know me that well, who are hesitant to do anything around me because they know it might make it to the stage. They're like, be careful with this guy. He's
Yeah.
gonna, I'm like, just relax. But yes, they're right. Something may come of this conversation.
You got to get
Um,
that t-shirt. I almost got one for myself because I run a small online ministry of just solo sermons on my podcast. And
mhm.
I saw a shirt that said, Pastor warning, anything you do or say may be used in one of my future sermons.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a comedian one. Comedian warning, whatever you do or say may be in my future set. And yeah,
Yeah, but I don't
that's
want to
for
warn
sure.
them. I want them to let
Yeah,
loose.
yeah, of course. But I think it's funny. Maybe you just have it on your underwear, So you're like I kind of warn people, but
Yeah. Because people are often surprised that me and some other people that they meet that are comedians are actually comedians because we're not on all the time.
Yeah.
We're very introverted and we soak it all in. Jim Carrey, Robin Williams, these are people that are introverts and they're on for the camera or the stand-up show. So we are, just soaking it all in. They're like, "Oh, you're so quiet," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm having." They're like, "Are you having a good time?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm having a great time. This is nice." I'm not
So
always like,
interesting.
"Hey, look at me." I'm not the life of the party. So that people are like, "Oh, you do stand up," and they're like, "Ugh, good for you."
Yeah, I remember laughing, and I've joked about on the podcast, when I told my grandparents that I had gotten into stand-up comedy, they just go, "You funny?"
Yeah,
And I said, Grandma's is supposed to be like the only person in your life who always support you. Your mom and dad will butt heads with you at some point, but grandma's always just a yes. No matter what, yes. You're
yeah,
handsome. All the ladies want you. You're a millionaire. No one's as good
yeah,
looking as you. That's supposed to be the grandma role. And my
yeah.
grandma goes, "You?" But yeah, I think it's interesting because so many people, at least in my life, will be like, "Oh yeah, of course, Mr. Whiskey, you're funny. You're always, telling stories and stuff." I'm like, but comedy is different than storytelling. And funny storytelling at family and friend functions,
Right.
uh, and it's a lot of almost I don't want to use the word crowd work, but when you're with family functions and friends, it's really y'all are bouncing ideas and stories off of each other, pulling from that, you
Yeah, they're already
know,
on your side.
right, that too, you know. Well, I find it, and this is just me personally, I prefer to perform for strangers rather than people I know.
Hmm.
Because interestingly enough, mentally for me, when I'm performing for people I know, the bar is set 100 times higher.
Right.
Although people who know me are more supportive and give me a much easier time. But in
Yes.
my mind, my desire to impress them is much higher because,
Yeah, the
the people I
pressure's
know.
higher on
Yeah,
the comedian to
yeah,
be
for
because they're the
sure.
ones going to be talking about you,
Right, right.
you know.
I know my one buddy, Dr. Barrett Matthews, he goes, "Listen, Mr. Whiskey, I could never do comedy. I do singing. You know why? Because if I do bad, I won't know till the end. They're going to be either clapping or booing. I'll already be off stage. Comedy, you know. You say a joke and the room goes silent, you know right then and there.
Immediately.
Right. And so I have to ask you, what is a joke that maybe you scrapped because it was just silent at least once
Mm.
or more than once that really surprised you? Was there ever a joke that you had to like get rid of?
Oh, great question. I don't know. Well, yeah, I mean, there's jokes that have not done as well as I expected, but I just keep hammering away at them
Okay.
until they are the way that I want them, and I kind of dissect why. I'm trying to think because I don't talk about politics, anything sexual. Um,
Most of those either love it or hate it jokes, you know.
yeah, yeah. So I don't put people off, so to speak. I'm trying to think what didn't go. This would probably be the most surprising to me. There's jokes in my show that I'll do until I film a special and then release it. And I may still do them here and there, but I try to retire them. Um, but what surprises me most is that jokes that I do that always do well, when I hit across that occasional audience that don't get it, blows my mind. And I'm like, this joke worked the last 100 times I've told it.
Right.
And it's supposed to be 8 minutes. I'm gonna make it 3 minutes, by the way, because you're not get. I don't understand, and I'll even tell them, I'm like, hey, this isn't new. I don't know what I've done this joke for hundreds, so it's really your fault
Right.
that you're not getting it. But yeah, there's been nothing lately that's absolutely tanked. I think I have a good bead on or pulse on what I can make funny and what I can't.
Okay. And then the big question I'm sure you get asked a lot as an interviewee, which is, have you ever thought about quitting, just leaving comedy?
All the time. It is. Yeah, because it is a pride swallowing business, right? It is based on clicks and likes and shares and social media, which I dislike that.
Right.
But I do make a living, so I am grateful for that. And people, it's frustrating that people equate fame to level of funny. So sometimes it'll be a
Mm,
struggle for me to get folks, acquaintances to come out to my show, maybe whether it's from church or elsewhere. And then I see them post online that they spent $200 to go see a celebrity perform in an arena who's filthy. And they've never seen them before. And it's like, oh, so they're automatically funny, but not your friend or acquaintance. So um, it is a world in which you'll hear no more than yes. So as in the arts altogether, actors, voiceover, comedians,
yeah.
you're going to hear no way more than yes. Um, so I always try to circle back to my goal. How do I make as many people as possible laugh? If that's my goal, then I'm successful because I'll just try to reach more and more people. So it's a matter of just obtaining work, keep working, finding new venues to perform in that maybe want comedy. I do a lot of neighborhood gigs. There's a lot of neighborhoods, especially in Florida where I live, where they have an event center in their neighborhood. So I'll contact them or they'll contact me and be like, we want to bring comedy to our neighborhood. People walk from their house to the event center or take their golf cart or whatever. And I'll put on a show, whether it's me alone or me and a buddy opening up for me. And they don't have to leave their neighborhood. So there's all different types of venues to approach charity events, fundraisers, church gigs, stuff like that. Um, but I do have to realize that, I may not be the household name that on day one that I thought I would be, right? Which is sort of a egotistical thing to think. But in the beginning, you do think you're going to be the greatest, because it is all about social media and marketing. So that's a catch 22 as well. I'm sure you've seen people get fame and notoriety from social media and then decide to be a stand-up or try to bring their online persona to the stage, and then they may sell out some clubs or theaters, but they won't be back the next year because they don't have. People are disappointed at the show.
Mm.
It's where I think is if I ever pop bigger than I have, which is not very big, and get the followers and to do these theater gigs and be a draw, as they say. I have hours of material. So I have the product. I just need to get more of the following.
One of the things I talked about, I mentioned early in the episode, speaking at Podcast Movement Evolution Chicago on integrating comedy. And one of the things I talked about is when you already have an established presence online,
Mhm.
specifically as a podcaster. So if you have a podcast that is a very serious format, long form, dark subjects conversations, and you decide suddenly you want to try integrating comedy into it, you could lose a lot of people who go there for the serious conversations.
Right.
On the flip side, if you are a comedic podcast, just a couple of guys joking around talking about stuff, and you decide, hey, we want to start addressing dark subjects, well, people who are going there to forget all that stuff, to escape from that stuff, to have a good time, you're going to lose that crowd.
Yeah.
So I highly suggest, like, when you are already established online, you have to kind of start a new account slash branding for your comedy side if it's not in alignment with what you're already doing. And I think it's important to do that, especially if you decide you're going to try stand up, you do it for a little bit, and then you decide you're not going to do it anymore. Now you've kind of muddled your already online account, your followers, maybe lost people in a way. So I think that is an important balance to maintain is knowing what's in alignment with you. And then I want to circle back to the mental health aspect. What would
Mhm.
you say is the biggest mental health lesson you have learned specifically through comedy?
Yeah. I think the more vulnerable I am to talk about the things that really bother me, the more genuine connection I make with the audience. In the beginning of my stand-up career, all of my jokes were outside of me. They were
Mm.
funny things that happened that I was around, or happened to me, or happened that I witnessed. A lot of my material now is introspective, me seeing a therapist, me being in a relationship, me feeling socially awkward, me having body dysmorphia or whatever that's called, just a poor self-image. It's all talking about, and I found that more people connect to that because I'm expressing my genuine concerns, and they may have similar concerns or they know people that do. So I think by that evolution in material, and I'll still do all sorts of kinds of material, right? But to the my latest special, the YouTube special called Everything Bothers Me, um, probably talks is a little bit more introspective than I have done in the past. So I think that is the and to, I guess to answer your question, was the most therapeutic to talk through because when I get those laughs, I'm like, oh, people get the other people get this. They get what I'm going through and what I'm talking about, and I think there's more of a connection there.
How have you dealt with one of the issues of social media that it is a breeding ground and a place for hate and for trolling, for those who aren't familiar with that term, just people
Yeah.
online busting your chops, giving you a hard time and hating for no reason.
Mhm.
Typically, it's no one successful. It's, some guy with a fake name and an anime girl profile picture. But in general, reading these kinds of things can still be very hurtful. And so, how have you dealt with, if at all, if you've gotten any hate comments,
Mhm.
whether they're death threats or, this stuff sucks, this isn't funny at all.
Right.
Have you found a mental filter for yourself, or what would you do to deal with that?
Yeah. And in my position, unfortunately, is um, one in which I read all the comments. You sometimes you hear celebrities say that they don't read the comments. Well, that's because there's 10,000 comments and they already have hundreds of thousands of millions of views. I like to engage because I'm trying to grow my social media presence, right? And I've been able to grow it organically with followers that are engaged, right? So it's not blind follows. So I it does hurt. It is not very frequent. And typically one of two things happens. Well, one thing happens all the time. I always respond with positivity. Always, this guy's not funny. And I go, and I always heart it and then go, thanks for giving it a watch. Or I'll try harder next time, or whatever I say. I don't know what I say. And
Yeah.
oftentimes they'll come back and go, oh, you're seeing this. No, man, I was just playing, great job. When they get embarrassed. Or the other thing is, fans will jump in on my behalf. So on my first comedy special, I talked on my dry bar comedy special. I mentioned on stage that I used to weigh 279 pounds, and some guy wrote in quotes "used to," implying that I still look that
Right.
that weight. And I responded in a fairly positive way, if I remember correctly. But the litany of comments that of fans that came in and defended me was wonderful. It was 10, 20, 30 comments later. People just how dare you and body shame and all this and that. And then another
Mm.
thing, I got a lot of flack about my tattoos in my first comedy special because it is a faith based, and some woman jumps in and she goes, "How dare they use this faith based platform to have somebody with tattoos on there?"
Mm.
And I responded with, "I'm sure you're referring to Leviticus. You shouldn't mark your body, but it really is shouldn't mark your body in the worship of other gods, right?" So context, and then I did that one little comment back, and then a litany of comments of other
Train
people
of
like how,
religious controversy arguments. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's so like, and the person that made that comment also assumed, let's just say I agree with this person. It was a female. Let's just say I agree with her about the tattoo thing, right? What if I was saved after my
Yeah.
tattoos? So the
Oh yeah.
assumptions she's making is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I always respond in positivity, and then typically fans will jump in, but I don't get too many. I don't
That's
get
good.
too many, and I do like it when they respond back after I respond because they don't think I'm going to respond, and I will if I see it, and most likely I will. I will heart it, and I will respond back thanking them for uh, whatever. Thanks for giving it a shot. Hopefully, the next joke is something you like or whatever.
Yeah, I know my one buddy, he'll respond to anything like, thank you for the feedback, have a nice day, or something like that. And yeah, it's just again, most people just hate to hate for no reason. And
You're right. There are a lot of accounts that their username is like 1 2 3 4 ABC at hashtag. It's a
yeah,
nonsense, or there's no picture. One guy made fun of my other tattoo, saying it wasn't original, and I was like, first of all, I don't do tattoos to be original. I do it because I wanted it for me. Right?
yeah.
But I didn't say that. I just said, "Oh, thanks. I'll give it a shot. Better next time, or I'll get a different one next time, or whatever."
Well, it's
I
like
don't know.
people will redirect so hard, so like in an episode with Massimo Rigotti, he and I were talking about addiction recovery, and he said there are going to be people who struggle with addiction or enjoy their, vices that are negative, who will literally detract from this conversation saying, "Oh, that guy was wearing a cowboy hat. What would he know?" Or, Massimo had
Yeah.
curly, messy hair. He said people will try to detract from anything else to not focus on it. So it's like, what do your tattoos have to do outside of the faith-based aspect? But in general, let's say your tattoo wasn't original. What does that have to do anything with your joke telling? It has
Yeah. And
zero. It has nothing to do with your jokes.
And what's going on in
Um,
that person's life that they felt the need to point that out? Did they feel better about themselves all of a sudden? Did they?
yeah, it's just,
Um,
yeah, it's
One
like I
thing
said.
about addiction, I want to mention this before we wrap it up. I don't know how much time we have, but you mentioned addiction. One of the biggest things that's helped me in my comedy career, probably 3 years ago ish. I'm not keeping track because I was never, I guess, quote unquote, an alcoholic, but I quit drinking several years ago. And that I wish I'd done that 15 years ago.
Mm,
Um, it just became um, it was too much. So when I think about my mental clarity and how I use my time and how I affect my brain and my thought process and my thinking, probably one of the best decisions ever was just to quit
mm.
drinking. If I want to drink, I'll write a joke. I'm not. It's not. But I wouldn't classify myself as an alcoholic. I just thought it got in the way. So I just wanted to remove any. What are my mental barriers to being more creative? And that was one of them.
Yeah, that's really important. Thank you for sharing that. I agree 100%. And, I've had some athletes on the show who said who were actually full-on addicts, and they said, I'm performing this well while under the influence or an alcoholic, especially with marathon
Right.
running. Let's sober up. Let's like go full throttle. Like
Right.
why am I holding myself back in life? Like I can achieve so much, and I,
Yeah.
I think that's so important. People don't realize that what a lot of people initially use, not as a coping skill, as a coping method, they end up becoming limiters on our life,
Mhm.
distractions and limiters. So I think it's important to take a step back and kind of realize what might be in our
Yeah.
way. And
And even if it's not a physical addiction, I started to look at several things like in the beginning or even today, some gigs don't pay all that much. I just do them for the love of the game, right? And then if I decided to take that gig and then go out drinking with my buddies after, my profit margin is even smaller. So I'm like, if I'm trying to make a living at this, why am I
Mhm.
making this dollar amount and then spending 40% of it at the bar, right? And
Right.
then secondly, if I decide to have a night of drinking or have a few drinks alone or with friends, um, what could I have created during that time? What could I have written?
Yeah.
Um, and even if I was funny or had some ideas and premises, there's no way I'm remembering them the next day. So it was just too much. Too much. It is in the way. It's not needed. And it's I would highly encourage if there's any kind of addiction. People are addicted to food, other things, some online addictions,
Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
other
TV and
substances,
social
just
media. I've gotten to the
yeah.
point where if I try
Mhm.
to spend time on TV or social media, I'm like, I could be working right now. Like I could be doing stuff right now, whether it's comedy, podcasting, writing, speaking, like
Right.
exercise. I don't say don't take a break. Definitely allot yourself time to relax and
Mhm.
rejuvenate, but uh, a lot of us
Yeah.
lack the self-control and discipline to limit our time, especially when it comes to social media. And we
Hmm.
all pretty much are all familiar with doom scrolling nowadays with that term and how easy it can be to fall into the
Yep.
trap of one more meme, one more whatever it is. And binge watching TV, especially with streaming
Right.
services. Oh, just one more episode. And oh, this episode ended on a cliffhanger. Guess what? Almost every single episode is going to end on a cliffhanger. That's kind of how they're designed.
Right.
So I think that's
I wonder if it's considered hypocritical of me I wonder if it's considered hypocritical of me to tell people to spend less time online, but hey, follow me. I got a lot of stuff I need to watch.
yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying. I, the reason I don't feel hypocritical with that is because I feel like our comedy, especially for me with my social media, is a lot of suicide prevention work, addiction recovery, mental health. The stuff I'm asking you to spend your time with is meant to cultivate life lessons and improve your life. Uh,
Right.
and same with our comedy compared to some of the stuff online. And that's not to say our comedy is so different from the memes online, but there is a big difference between, at least in my generation and younger generations, what we find funny online is again mostly hateful, or it's so stupid. Some of it is just
Yeah.
so stupid. Even like we've got a whole generation that you could, if you put say two numbers next to each other, the whole room is just loses it, And I won't say those two numbers again because it's just ridiculous. But all this stuff has just
Yeah.
changed so
I
much.
get it. I mean, my algorithm's probably full of people falling. I get hooked on that.
Yeah,
It
I
isn't
try
enough.
every now and then I go down the epic fails, try not to laugh train in or
But then again, I do like the videos where you think you're watching an epic fail video, but it's a bunch of great achieve, a BMXer doing six flips and landing it. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
one of those
Well, like those
opposites.
are like luckiest moments, or you had to be there to believe it kind of stuff caught on
Yes.
camera. Like I those are super cool. I love especially the sports ones. Like
Yes.
I've seen a guy, hit a ping pong ball with a golf club and it bounced
Yeah.
off 20 different objects into a bottle cap. And it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
cool stuff like that. But what I'm curious to know, and I'm sure we all are, is, so you just had your Everything Bothers Me special kind of drop now video live on YouTube. We're gonna have the link below for people to watch. What is next? We're going into 2026 now. Do you have kind of like a map out outline of what you want to do comedy wise? Is it like
Hmm.
once the new year drops, you're going to be contacting all these clubs? What's the future looking
Yeah.
like?
I think it's several things. So the what I'm excited to be working on right now is actually more more content stand up about my family and
Okay.
incorporating um a bit of a slideshow. I have this boxes and boxes of these old photos, and I experimented with this last year at a small venue in St. Augustine, Florida, and we sold it out. I sold it out. It's only a 100 seater, but I had a 6 or 7 minute portion of my show where I kind of walked through my life from birth to college in pictures, and it was just funny family photos that I was able. So my experiment was, is this funny to just my family and I or everyone? And it turns out it's very relatable. And I
Mm,
want to expand on that into later years of my life. Um, and that may be something that'll turn out to be a new special down the road. I'm in no rush to do another special, but it is more material, more content creation because of the success of the YouTube special. Um, I actually have a meeting tomorrow with an agency out in LA that's potentially interested in managing my career. So, more exposure. Back to my original goal, more exposure equals my chance to make more people laugh.
right.
So, and your folks here that listen to this, if they can watch and share, and comment and like, the more I would love to reach more and more people. I just want to bring a smile to folks' lives on a bigger and bigger scale. So, um, those are the two things I'm excited about. Because now the pressure's on. Whenever you release a special, it's only my second one, the pressure's on. I constantly feel every gig I have, and I just had a show Friday night. What's today? Sunday. I I'm backstage and I'm like, did all these people watch my special and they know everything? How much new material do I have to
Mm,
do? And that's a bit egotistical because only 100,000 people have watched my specials so far in a month. How many of them are there, right? I don't know.
right.
But sometimes when you go to see a comedy show, the audience will kind of look you up online, and so I'm very paranoid about what have they seen, what haven't they, and I've come to realize it doesn't matter. Um, but I kind of like that pressure. Like you better have some new jokes, new material, new
100%.
stuff. So maybe a month ago, I did a benefit for this organization that raises money for people that can't afford a defense. They're in jail, claimed to be falsely accused, but can't afford to fight it. And this organization raises money to help those people. And
That's
at the show
awesome.
was actually three exonerees, like people that were proved innocent through this organization and released, and they were there. Um, and I, my special was out, and I was like, how many of these people have seen, and I just ended up doing a blend of different material and they loved it anyway. But this guy after the show is like, hey, this is the third time I've seen you here at this club. And I was like, oh, I hope you've heard some new stuff. And he's like, that's what I love about you. He's like, I feel like I hear new stuff every time I see you.
Well, that's
And I was
good.
like, that was such a relief to me because egotistically or not, you kind of feel like, oh, they saw my show, they memorized everything when they really haven't memorized. Um, and they enjoyed the show, and I'm happy that I can provide that diversity, hopefully.
I think that's super important. And, I think getting around to those different groups, the same thing with me. The reason I do comedy, because I never, woke up and I was like, I want to be a comedian one day. But the idea was that it helps me to reach different people who need some people can only be serious and some people can only be, comedic.
Mhm.
And, being able to reach more people is vital to suicide prevention, addiction recovery, mental
Mhm.
health, right? Having,
Yeah.
uh, you know, even like Magic the Gathering is a card game, and I only got into it because if you go to Nuke school, you kind of have to learn how to play it if you want to socialize. And some of the suicide conversations that we had, some of the people who admitted to me that they were suicidal, it was because of the Magic the Gathering bond that we had, and
Yeah.
I only really played it to socialize with people. So you never know what is going to be an icebreaker, so to speak, in someone's life. And so I think comedy is a great segue. I think it's something that everyone should work on, not to a professional degree, but just the art of storytelling,
Yeah.
public speaking, comedy. I think we've really lost public speaking, the ability to communicate with one another. And the tech age is
Yeah.
really helping that in a negative way and really helping it in a positive way. It's
Hmm.
again, it's a tool on how we use it. And one of the things is with reusing material, actually, Preacher Lawson, are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
For those who aren't familiar listening, Preacher Lawson was on AGT, America's Got Talent, almost won, very funny guy. He came to the Nuke School base where I was at the time during training and performed for free. And I saw him, and he actually said at the end of his performance Now, does anyone have any jokes they want me to perform that they've seen me do on America's Got Talent or somewhere else? And people were like, the grandma joke, do the joke about your grandma and then
Oh,
and
funny.
exercising the bullets out of you. And so I thought that was neat that he
I like
asked,
that.
and people wanted to see it live. And to me it was I don't know. I didn't care as much. I was like, well, I've heard the joke, but I guess to some people, like seeing him live do it, it
Yeah.
was like, wow, it's amazing. So, that was pretty cool, something neat. Because that was the
Yeah.
first time I ever saw a comedian live, and they were like, hey, any jokes y'all want me to do that you
Yeah,
know
so
about?
I
So,
get that sometimes like off stage though. They're like, "Oh, you didn't do the whatever stuff. You know, you didn't
right,
do." And I was like, "Oh." And sometimes I forgot I had that joke. I'm like, "Oh, that was
that would have been perfect.
yeah, that would have been great. Where were you? I had to put you in a, get an earpiece and you can tell
Yeah,
me what jokes to do."
right. Well, that's why I wear the hat. I have got a walkie-talkie underneath it,
Right,
so
right.
reading in the jokes.
Yeah,
I picked that
Preacher's
up.
great. He's if you like clean comedy, he's a little bit different than me in that he's more energetic,
Yeah.
more, he's a little crazier up there, but
Very
clean.
dynamic, very with
Yeah, very
the
good
body
comic,
language
and
and stuff like that.
well, I've worked with him before,
Yeah.
and he's a Florida guy, and yeah, he's great. I like him.
Yeah, and then what I want to leave us with, Mr. Johnson, which I didn't ask you initially because I said as someone when people find out I do comedy, right, and you already know where we're going with this, they always ask the question, "Oh, you're funny? Tell us a joke." And
Yeah,
I
say
hate that.
something funny,
Now
right?
I do have a joke I keep in my back pocket that's a really stupid one, and I can share it if we want, but I have to ask, do you have like a go-to joke for when people ask you that question?
Yeah, yeah. It's really a line more than a joke, and it insults them, which is funny to me. So sometimes they'll go, "Oh, you're a comedian. Say something funny," and then I'll just look at them and go, "That shirt looks good on you." And
That's a good
they're
one.
like, "What? Oh," and I just walk away. I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not a comedy jukebox people,
Mm.
So,
Well, I'm a jukebox because if you pay me, I will say a joke.
right, right, right.
Right.
But
I'm a
then
jukebox
if
if you
I,
pay. I'm not a
yeah,
free jukebox.
right, right, right. But
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you'll find as a comedian, you'll do more free shows than anything in your career, in
Yeah.
our careers. And but yeah, if I have to actually stay in that conversation and I can't walk away, I'll just go, "Oh, I save it all for the stage. You don't want to hear me."
Okay. That's good.
And then they'll, I what I really dislike, not dislike, but I find interesting is people will go, "I heard this joke on the internet. You can use it in your act." I was like, "That's not the way."
Yeah. That to me, that almost comes off as insulting.
Yeah,
And
I'm like,
to
"No,
that,
that's." I'm
yeah.
like, "No, it's good," or I'll just let them tell it, and then laugh with them, and then end it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure they have good intentions, but it kind of
Of
comes off
course.
insulting, like, oh, it's like, oh, you think I can't make my own stuff up,
Yeah,
And
I
so,
always assume positive intent. They're not going to come and talk to me if they didn't like the show.
yeah.
So
Yeah, no, 100%. But I see how it comes off. And I know a few comedians, I couldn't name any personally, but I've heard people being like, oh, you're a comedian, say something funny. And the person will say something funny. Like they'll
yeah,
just, say something funny. For me, I've got my stupid joke. It's so dumb. It's not even mine. I borrowed it from Mike Roth, who was one of the first people I ever interviewed on the show. And
mhm,
who knows where he got it from? It's nothing special, but
right, like a street
it's
joke.
two blondes walk into a building. You think one of them would have seen it.
Yeah, yeah,
It
I've
is
heard
just
that.
so stupid. People don't really make fun of blondes anymore. I feel like that's become politically incorrect, so to speak.
Everything is politically incorrect. That's
Yeah,
why
I was gonna
everything
say,
bothers me. Everything.
yeah,
I'm the cleanest and most, maybe not the cleanest, but I'm a clean comic and I'm not offensive, and you would be amazed at what people get put off by. Like
yeah,
I did a joke. It wasn't even a joke. So I was on stage and I had the microphone in the stand, and I talk a lot with my hands sometimes.
same,
And some
same.
woman in the front row said, "Oh, you talk a lot with your hands." And I said, "I know, I'm not even Italian." And because
Mm,
stereotypically Italians talk a lot with their hands, hey.
yeah,
And the whole half of the crowd was like, "Whoa, whoa." And I was like, "That's offensive that I mentioned Italians talk with their hand. That you guys need to chill out." I mean,
that would ruin half my jokes because I am Italian. So on the podcast, you don't see it because I've got my lower half cut
right.
off. But for anyone who's watched me perform comedy or even just talk at any event, I my hands are all over the place. And one of the jokes I used to make is boot camp was so difficult because you got to keep your hands at the side, at attention. And I said, listen, petty officer, this is a little racist and oppressive because I'm Italian. I have to talk with my hands. You're kind of diminishing my cultural experience right now.
Right.
Um, and so I always, when people are like, "You talk with your hands a lot," I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Italian," you know. So it's interesting. You know, said the opposite, and I've never really had anyone take offense to it. And if they
Yeah,
did,
it's
they did
very,
the
but
same
it was
thing
only
in
that
like
one
the.
time, and it was like,
It's
well,
not like
first
a
of all, it's
bad
true.
stereotype,
It's
you know.
true, right? And then second of all, it's not only true, it's not offensive to anyone other than group of fools over
Yeah.
here. And I
Who
think they
aren't
were just
Italian
waiting.
but are taking offense on behalf of Italian people in their mind. Right? Because it's usually like I mean, I've seen with most race jokes, it's not even the race of the joke that is offended. It's people who aren't that race getting
Well, that's
offended
like that
by
in society. I
that's yeah,
mean,
that's just society in general.
like
But
when the Cleveland Indians changed their name to the Guardians, ahead of some Native American organizations were like, what, why are we doing this?
I think that the best was they took the Native American off the Land O'Lakes butter or whatever it was, and they said, "So cool. So you kept the land and got rid of the Native American.
Right.
This is even more racist than having them there."
Right.
And they
Right.
got I think they got rid of Aunt Jemima from they got
Yes.
rid of her picture, and it
She
was
was like
like,
a famous entrepreneur.
yeah, I don't get it. People,
It's white
yeah,
people overcompensating for whatever, for their guilt.
yeah.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, I think actually wearing this shirtless Abraham Lincoln riding a shark sometimes I feel like I might get stopped on the street for it. I've got an Uncle Sam dabbing shirt. But you listen, just being a veteran, I've had young quote politically correct women call me baby killer and stuff like that for being in the
Ugh,
military. So,
the worst.
you know, what big cultivation here with both comedy and life in general. You can't please everyone. I mean,
Right.
you just can't. It's impossible.
Yeah, I've
So
just learned to find my audience.
yeah,
I'm not going to convince you to follow me. I just if you like what I'm doing and you think it's funny, then follow. And I'm not
yeah.
gonna chase you down and convince you. No, 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 no. I'm funny, really. So you just have to find your people and cultivate that crowd.
Yeah, so this has been great. I found it insightful, and for everyone listening, you know, all the advice that Mr. Johnson gave me is also for you. You know, whether
I love how
you've
you call me
thought about
Mr.
it.
Johnson. I'm
Yeah.
already way older than you, but I don't. You can just call me Danny. That's fine. You're making
Danny.
me feel older. Mr. Johnson, thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, but you know, it's for everyone who's thinking about getting into comedy. It's you know, there pretty much every city has an open mic somewhere.
Yeah, where are
Just
you based out of?
I'm in Savannah, Georgia, so I'm actually right down the street from you. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
you're
connect
two
with you after this
hours.
about some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they have the Savannah Comedy Review. I've done that before.
Yeah, they've got a couple of things here, but in general, almost every city has something. Just do your research. I would talk to honestly the local bartenders and owners. Probably know the most, but
Yeah,
there's also
Facebook
some
groups.
online
Just search like your
forums.
city and comedy, and
Yeah,
there's pretty much a Facebook group for every city.
yeah. So I would highly encourage y'all to get out there. But if that's too intimidating, you could always start online. You know, I'll caution you with social media is different. I think in person you get reactions in a different way than online. So you
Yeah,
should
live is the
definitely,
best.
yeah. But if you got to start, you know, in the shallow end of the pool, so to speak, by all means. But yeah, and a great way to start is by checking out Danny Johnson's comedy special. We're gonna have that in the link below for
Yeah.
you to check out. And I just want to thank you for your time today. And I look forward to whatever you have coming out this year. You know, be sure to send it my way, and I'll promote it here. And we'll next time you do another special, I'd love to have you back on the show and talk about that experience.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'll give your set a watch and good luck to you. And shoot me a message if you ever have any questions or you want to, talk about comedy, man. I'll help you out as best I can.